Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Love in Savitri, with our beloved Alok Bhai. I'm going to begin on page 31 because there are a few lines that lead us into the next. Well, one line especially. Their unity is too close for search and clasp, and love is a yearning of the one for the one. And beauty is a sweet difference of the same, and oneness is the soul of multitude. So much to say here.
Yes, so as we can see, almost all the major experiences that yogis have ever experienced in traditional yoga, they are almost done with in book 1, canto 3.
Mm-hmm.
So when people try to compare Sri Aurobindo's yoga with traditional Vedanta and all kinds of things, almost all the major experiences, and many of them which have not been experienced. For example, when the inner being opens, you hear sounds, you see lights. But here, Sri Aurobindo describes not only with regard to sound and light, but also with regard to touch, perception, which is different from just the sense experience. Everything is describing in great graphic detail. And Mother said that this will be the experience of the new being. When they will come, it will be the natural way to live. In Hota's commentaries, right now yogis have to do so much to break the veil between the outer and the inner being. And then, whether we use the word humanity, probably it will be redundant, the new beings of the new creation, they will be born with this kind of a worldview, this kind of a perception. They will perceive the world differently.
I believe some of them are already here.
Yes, absolutely.
And especially the children.
Yes, and this is happening very naturally. Many people ask what kind of sadhana, tapasya, but when it has to happen, the veil breaks, and it is not that you have done something or tried something. So in time to come, this is just the beginning. In time to come, children will be born with very few, very soon. Maybe even when they are 5 or 6 or 7, the brain will be able to support this kind of a new experiences. They will live in that state. So that state is being described as Ashwapati is approaching the source. So what happens when you approach the source, there is that last point where you begin to feel there is no difference, and yet you want to enjoy the difference. Sri Ramakrishna speaks of that. Mother writes in one of her prayers that if you merge, you know, like for instance, love becomes impossible when there is complete unity.
You lose the multiplicity.
But if you are just a small little veil is deliberately kept by certain yogis to enjoy. Because if you become one, we cannot imagine, I was just contemplating, rather writing a little, just like that, kind of, I won't use the word imagination, but a kind of story about what it will be in the future. So, say 500 years down the line, and many things were coming down. Then one of them was that, there is this character who is contemplating that when he was still a human, and then I realized that you lose that charm of love of the divine the way we experience today. The mother says, this experience, even the greatest aspiration, the joy of aspiration, all this will go away. What will come is something else, something much higher and greater. But this that we experience, there is a great joy in the way even that bhakti literally comes from that root bhaj, to enjoy, to take joy in the divine. So he is reaching that point, the source. And as he closes in on the source, he has this experience. I'll just go a few lines even further up. And All was known by the light of identity, and spirit was its own self evidence. We may know the spirit this way, that way, but the spirit is known to itself. It doesn't need somebody else to confirm or ratify that, I exist. The Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes because now he is seeing the world the way the divine sees it. This is what our aspiration should be, that we understand it the way as a human, even the highest reaches of human thought is nothing. How does the divine experience this world and sees this world? And saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. Through many mouths, through many, we see that Vishwarup in the Gita, where Shri Krishna is all the mouths. There are many mouths through which he is feeding. They are all going inside. That there is a interesting aside to this experience of this vast cosmic consciousness when you are on the threshold of the transcendent and the fusion of the three. That comes later. So go through that cosmic consciousness where the multiplicity becomes part of your own one. So Nirodha asked Sri Aurobindo, "Sir, you must be having your own Vishwarup. So, but I am frightened because what happened to Arjuna in the Gita?" So he says, "No, sir, it happened to Arjuna because Shri Krishna Vishwarup, he saw himself and all his relatives and friends being eaten by those and stuck in his jaws." Shobhita describes, they are all stuck in his jaws, they are being eaten. He was frightened. Mine is not of that nature. It is. Now the beauty is, first time Sri Aurobindo is openly mentioning about his Vishwarup. Now Shri Krishna had to take that because that was the aspect on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So it's not like that is the only roop. It's a roop form. With the gopis, he could take a different Vishwarup. Sometimes we get stuck with, he could take a different Vishwarup where all three are fused together. But he didn't show to the gops and gopis what his Vishwarup was. So I suppose when Sri Aurobindo is saying this, that no, mine is different. Very interesting, because when a yogi reclaims his cosmic being, then there is the cosmic form. And each one has his own cosmic form depending upon what he represents. So there is a little glimpse here. It will come later on also. Several places it comes. And so it continues. There, unity is too close for search and clasp. So you are as if merging and separating. You don't have to search. It's there. You can enter the state of unity and you can step out. Mother describes this when someone asked her about, when Sri Aurobindo physically withdraws. She said, to merge into Sri Aurobindo and come out was very easy. We could do it long back. When she describes the consciousness of immortality, she is describing it is different from what she wants to bring about in the physical, the deathless state. And then she describes that it was very easy. So there is no need to search and try to unite. Clasp, you are holding with difficulty. Clasp, see the word? You are trying to hold something which you will lose. Here it's natural, spontaneous. You could just step out, you could step in, and that's it. And love is a yearning of the one for the one. And this reminds straight away what Mother spoke about love. She says love is not what we understand, of course. Love is not sexual intercourse. Love is not the heart's hunger. Love is not even, need for a mental companion. And then she says what really love is. She says it comes from the one and goes to the one. For the joy of its play, it has created forms. So there are two different forms. So love is enjoying itself through two different forms. It's the same power. And if one can connect with that, then there is no problem. So it's a mighty vibration, she says, coming from the one and going back to the one. But here it's not going back like the Gyan Yogi back through its own source. It's going through the other. That's why when Mother describes what is the knowledge that she has, when death says that if you cease to love, you will know. And then she says, I know that knowledge is a vast embrace. So there are two routes we can go to the source. One is from within, that's the Gyan Yogi. So he doesn't talk about love, though at the end he recognizes. Or the other route is you go through the other. Now here comes all that we normally talk about, worship, adoration. It could even be, as in ancient traditions, as two beings. And then it goes to the other. And the beauty there is that there is a joy of the multiplicity. One enjoys that. So here there is love. But what is this love? And love is a yearning of the one for the one. It reminds of Sri Aurobindo's poem Immortal Love. So there he says, if I had loved you for your beauty fair and I think, what is it? Something about the hair, he says.
Yeah.
My love would cease to be. Because after some time it will age. And then he says, if I loved you for your sweet voice and for your heart of Ruth, time might pursue, might reach. Maybe it'll last longer, but still time may catch up and it may fade away. But I have loved thee. For thyself indeed, myself with myself have ensnared. Time I exceed and am for change prepared. Myself with myself. It is literally recognizing your own self in the other. There is a whole passage in Upanishadic. Sorry, I'm just elaborating. I just enjoy what Sri Aurobindo writes in one of the Ishavasya Upanishad, where there is a commentary between the guru and the student. And he says, say not that such a love does not exist. And initially describes that initially I too felt that love is nothing but a yearning or craving of the flesh. But later on, all this he describes. Then he says, but in its deepest truth, love is a recognition of your own deepest self in the other.
I think it's Yeats who said, I have loved thee for the human soul in thee.
Of course. But this recognition of your own self in the other, what a powerful thing it would be. It is, in fact. And love is a yearning of the one for the one. And he describes, say not that such a love does not exist. And then he says, it is equally true of friendship. He says, why does a friend love a friend? Because he sees something of himself in the other. So here it is, love is a yearning of the one for the one. So it is like it is yourself, but there is a form, there is a thought structure, mind, they are wailing. So you rush and you want no obstacles. What a beauty it is. Oh, beauty comes next. And beauty is a sweet difference of the same. Because in its essence, beauty is formless and universal. So, what is the difference? Difference comes with the creation of forms. That's how beauty is just manifesting. So here we have a description of the very first manifestation of beauty through form. Beyond it, beauty is formless. It's beatitude.
Yes.
This was asked to Sri Aurobindo in evening talks. He said, people don't know, but beauty is actually formless. Now, this is something which goes beyond human conception. Because beauty is something we always associate with form. Some kind of structure. It could be even a thought. It need not be a physical form. Beautiful thought. Now, thought is a form. Beautiful feeling. It is a form. But there is a truth of beauty is in its formless state, in the divine. So here, and beauty is a sweet difference of the same. Is the same, but it's just putting a little veil to enjoy, to appreciate. And oneness is the soul of multitude. So it is that threshold. Now in cosmic spirit you have the multitude. In the transcendent there is one. It is that point where the one and the many. The many have not been abolished but taken in one vast embrace. That's what is meant by in supramental yoga. One doesn't merge in the transcendent, lose himself. One stands at that threshold where the transcendent begins to manifest. So all the three states come together. And that's how Sri Aurobindo reveals the truth of the Vishwarup. He says, if you study the Vishwarup, you see the individual, Krishna is there. You see the cosmic spirit. And he describes something which is so interesting. When I had read it, it never struck me. That but all around is no end. That light is spreading into infinity. That is the transcendent. So all the three aspects are there together. But traditional yoga is, if at all you enter the cosmic spirit, they don't go through that. In our yoga, nirvana is through this door. But if at all they go, they eventually use it as to leap into the transcendent. That's why he speaks of Buddha. So in Buddhism, you have to ultimately abandon all kinds of structures, forms, visions, gods, goddesses, everything. The original Buddha's story. And at the end, there is the abolishing of all, the cosmos and the self in a signless emptiness. Now, but because Buddha went through all this, Mahayana Buddhism said, no, we want to relish this. This is an invaluable literature. That's how Mahayana came, which is so much like Hindu thought. It began integrating with the world. Mahayana Buddhism brought in the idea of Amitabha Buddha, Maitreyi. That's Mahayana which brought that. No, Buddha turns to the world. But Hinayana says, no, all this has to be abolished. And what that is, nobody can say. So here he is describing that threshold, where like Buddha he stands. Merger or no merger. But right now he is enjoying. So let us enjoy with that. Take that joy. And oneness is the soul of multitude.
I'd like to read on a little bit more.
Because
this unites everything.
Yeah.
There, all the truths unite in a single truth, and all ideas rejoin reality. There, knowing herself by her own termless self, wisdom supernal, wordless, absolute, sat uncompanioned in the eternal calm, all-seeing, motionless, sovereign, and alone.
So this is the description. Now, see, when we do word search, the word overmind is not mentioned here, nor is the word supermind. But this is the experience where you are waiting at the gates of the supermind and at the highest levels of overmind, because overmind itself has several levels. At the highest levels of the overmind, you are at the gates of the supermind. So that little substratum where it just that little point, that trace. So it is the cosmic consciousness which Ashwapati has regained, and he is discovering that as these truths come down, they become separated. It's like that point in the prism where the white light is changing into the many colors.
It's interesting as I go through these two cantos, Canto 3 and Canto 5.
Yes.
He puts the secret knowledge in between the two.
Yes, he put the secret knowledge
but,
in between.
In this canto, it seems that he's already achieved everything.
Yes.
And yet there is still that Canto
Because
5.
now the manifestation, that is what we see in Canto 5.
Yes.
This is already he has achieved the highest point that one can imagine. So the experience he's describing is that in our ignorance of the mind, we dispute and debate. We look at things as opposing each other, as contrary to each other. But in the highest consciousness, they are complementary to each other. So the quarrel ceases, the dispute ceases. And that was the sense which Sri Ramakrishna said, which has been so much misinterpreted. He said that when the pot is half full, then it makes a lot of noise. When it is completely full, it becomes silent. So of course, people interpreted that you will stop speaking. No, because Sri Ramakrishna himself spoke. This was asked to Sri Aurobindo. He said, but he himself spoke. Swami Vivekananda went and spoke. So either you are implying that they didn't receive. It's not that. But dispute ceases. That noise that we make, what you speak is the one. In multiple ways, the one expresses itself. The same idea, and Mother speaks of this, when you discover that the same idea is expressed in different ways, then you see it is the same truth which Buddha expresses in one way, Lao Tse expresses in another way, and Christ expresses in a third way. Same truth. There is no difference. If you go to the root of the teaching, it is the same. But the expression is different. Same truth. So, all ideas rejoin reality. And even what appears here is mutually opposing. And the last of all opposition is divine and undivine, good and evil. So, in Notes on the Way, that is in the agenda, the mother describes an experience where she says, my child, in that everything joins. Good and evil unite. You'll see the Tao symbol, na? Good and evil, the dark and bright. But there is a last point missing there. And that is what Mother reveals. It's not there. They remain what they are. But there is a possibility in the black fish. So it's a dynamic movement, which is the cosmos. And there is the white center of the black and the black center of the white. So, very interesting symbol, Tao. Tao, that's how it is described, not Tao. So, the mother says in that supramental, the two unite, good and evil. Now, disciple is confused. What does it mean? The two unite? She says, but they both undergo a transmutation. So, good discovers its secret truth, and evil discovers its secret good. There is no quarrel. That's why it is said that there is the right hand of Vishnu, from whom the gods came, and from the left hand the asuras came. In its origin, they are one. But as it enters into creation, you will see all these quarrels and disputes. So that will come later on in that realization. So what is wisdom? Wisdom is that which can synthesize all the different divergent strands and recover and give it to itself its secret truth. It is not, it does not blur the differences and distinctions. That's why it's sometimes very difficult to, see what Sri Aurobindo is saying, especially when we take the partial quote. So, Sri Aurobindo, when he speaks about differences, he is very clear on what are the differences. But he also sees the unity behind everything together.
Yes.
So, that is the wisdom. Yeah.
So, shall we move on?
Maybe we can just read these 4 lines. The boundless with the boundless, their consorts. Just 4 lines, 3 lines. While there, one can be wider than the world. While there, one is one's own infinity. These lines are important because often, of late also, same page, just few lines below, there is this famous Carl Sagan's, we are a hodgepodge of all kinds of ideas. Suddenly, see, this small little planet, we are fighting, this is our home. Okay, it's quite good emotion, I understand. But from a yogic perspective, from a material perspective, we are nothing. May not be even an ant crawling on the earth's surface. But from the spiritual perspective, man can be wider than the cosmos. He has within him that potential. Now, this is something which only a yogi understands. From the purely material point of view, there is nothing. So, it can sober you down, humble you down, which is very good. But man is not meant to remain forever like that. He has to reclaim. What he has to reclaim? The boundless. With the boundless, their consorts. And that's what toward the end, we see the boon which Savitri is being granted, possibility. Boundless Savitri lose into boundless Satyavan. Both discover their own boundlessness. And yet there is a little difference. This is Savitri, this is Satyavan. They are not losing into each other. So she is told, you lose yourself into each other and merge and
deep possibility always to love.
But then Savitri refuses it. So boundless, with the boundless, their consorts, while there, one can be wider than the world. While there, one is one's own infinity. It's not easy to be there. That's why while there. Very difficult. That's what, lastly, before we go to the next passage, long passage, Sister Nivedita asked once, when she came back to Shardama, Sri Ramakrishna had obviously withdrawn. So she says, one thing I don't understand about Swamiji, Vivekananda. What is it? He says, when he talks about Brahman, he is so vast, looks like he is breathing infinity. But if somebody says something against India, he is like going to roll up his sleeves and going to... He almost gets so angry. What is it? Though in his letters it doesn't come across like that. But still, he says, what is this? I don't understand. She says, oh, that. Are, the Divine Mother has deliberately put a little veil over him. How he will do the work otherwise? And that's what Sri Ramakrishna had told him, that the day you know who you are, you will go back. And that's what happened. He came back from his travels and started, preparing to go back. So there is a threshold where we can stand, embrace the wide world, and yet not lose ourselves into the one. This is what is being described here. And now comes the next logical movement.
Where are we?
Vast unanimity. That's what you want to. It will end with...
Yes. A vast unanimity ended life's debate. The war of thoughts that fathers the universe, the clash of forces struggling to prevail, in the tremendous shock that lights a star, as in the building of a grain of dust, the grooves that turn their dumb ellipse in space, plowed by the seeking of the world's desire, the long regurgitations of time's flood, the torment edging the dire force of lust that wakes kinetic in earth's dullard slime and carves a personality out of mud, the sorrow by which nature's hunger is fed, the estrus which creates with fire of pain, the fate that punishes virtue with defeat, the tragedy that destroys long happiness, the weeping of love, the quarrel of the gods, ceased in a truth which lives in its own light.
So very interestingly, Shri Aurobindo is describing all this. There is in Hindi say, kya andaz hai? So, look at it. All these things are born out of a state of division, which is due to ignorance. The moment you step into unity and realize the oneness, it ceases. That is a permanent remedy. Only as a psychiatrist I can't tell people, you are quarreling, recover the one. They will say, sir, which hospital are you taking treatment from? But this is the solution. Whatever we may say, this is the solution if we want to end up all these things which torment us. And yet, they are preparations and passages to reach that point. So at once he is revealing the secret truth behind all unhappiness. At the same time, how this is a passage. And he describes so beautifully, a vast unanimity ended life's debate. This is the unanimity of seeing the one in everything and everywhere. He is expressing itself now as whom in ignorance we may say my enemy. And you have to fight, but still it is the same. And I take this example sometimes. It has happened during the time of the British rule in India. Sometimes the soldiers, their stories, were caught in a dilemma. The dilemma was that they have to fire against people who are their own people. Whole film. Now people will say, I'm watching movie. But you know, RRR is based on this. You're fighting with your own people. Now, why do you recognize your own people? Because have the same racial and other characteristic born in the soil. But this is true at the highest level. You may still have to fight. Like Arjuna has to fight against his own people. But recognizing that it is Krishna in them and Krishna in us. So that is the unanimity. Unanimity we understand where everybody agrees to the same viewpoint. Something which will never happen. That's what people had asked me recently, even about Auroville, all this going on. And they said, we should solve it by debates and, discussions. I said, for last, at least Socrates' time, 2000 years, man has been debating and discussing. And he has never arrived at unanimity. Because it's not the nature of the mind to arrive at unanimity. Mind cannot. It will always be an angle of vision. Often a very sharp angle of vision. And this angle of vision has its own truth. And the other angle of vision has its own truth. So what is the way to rise in your consciousness and arrive at the true unanimity? So all these clashes are they prod us, they push us to arrive at that unanimity which comes in the vision of the One. And if we don't do that, this way it cannot be solved. Because any amount of rational argument, at the end, the highest way reason ends in reasonable people. Not all who reason out are reasonable people. But if a rational person is also reasonable, highest thing is, okay, we agree to disagree. You stay with your... So we'll never arrive at a consensus when it comes to action. So in action we always there are people who have to decide. You may disagree with them, but they will decide. This is how life moves at the rational level. At the rational level, it cannot happen. Whatever people may say, that everybody is by consensus agreeing.
And then there are more and more committees.
More and more, yes.
And Mother says, more committees, more useless talk.
Absolutely. This is useless talk. I can tell you, I had been put in so many committees, I withdrew myself from all. Why? Because the only thing it used to be in my earlier days, that you used to get nice tea and samosa. And I realized I no more need it. So I can, much easier wasting your time, is much easier to, pick up, because it will never arrive. So what is the way? The way is to rise higher in consciousness till we arrive at the unanimity of seeing God's vision and God's will. Only thing that matters is what is the divine will at a given moment. That too you cannot make a dogma. That is the ultimate. That what is the divine will seeking to express itself even through what I may look like an error. There is something it is trying to express and to join with that. There you have unanimity. And then comes the war of thoughts that fathers the universe.
Oh.
All this world is because of struggle of ideologies, and then new fresh thoughts spring up. And that begins to govern life, because out of this clash at the end, something springs up. So that is how universe is fathered. The clash of forces, struggling to prevail. And what marvelous line this is. In the tremendous shock that lights a star, as in the building of a grain of dust. In the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo calls it as the Samam Brahman. And he puts it poetically in who? The hand that sent Jupiter, spinning through heaven, spends all its cunning to fashion a curl.
A curl.
And he says there are two errors, illusions, with which we suffer, the ego suffers. Illusion of quantity and the illusion of quality. Samam Brahman removes it away. Quantity is where you say that 1,000 ants are more than one human being. Well, they may be, if all the 1,000 together bite you, they may fall you. But the point is that if numbers matter, that's the problem of democracy. If numbers matter, and there is the illusion of quality, because behind this which we call as superior and this which we call inferior, in both of them it is the divine expressing himself at different stages in different ways. So these two illusions drop off when we have the Brahman realization. And he uses the word samam Brahman. Here he is describing in the most marvelous ways, in the tremendous shock that lights a star, as in the building of a grain of dust. See the who, lines of who, but in what a different way. The grooves that turn their dumb ellipse in space. Nobody knows these roots, their paths created by the very fact of creation. Ploughed by the seeking of the world's desire. What is the desire of the world? He's not talking of human desire. The original desire to be through all this multiplicity. And you see these, it has created grooves for everything and everywhere, fixed things in its place. The long regurgitations of time's flood. So that's why history repeats itself. And it's not exactly true that we do not learn. Only we learn very slowly. We could have learned so much, but we learn this much. That's okay. Regurgitation. So the waves of time return. So there is a truth that time is linear and it never comes back. But this partial truth. Partial truths are expressed in this way. Zindagi na milegi dobara. It's like one lifetime you have and what is lost is lost. No. Forms are lost. But it comes back in new ways, new forms to challenge us. So we see we see the sea, we see the waves that come and vanish, but fresh waves comes. They too are waves. So regurgitations. Regurgitation is a very cosmic level. Cycles of time, literally. Something it achieves, then it's out, throws out certain possibilities of manifestation, comes back, enters a quiescent stage. Then again it throws new possibilities. That's how each cycle is better than the previous one. The torment, edging, the dire force of lust, it shakes the hard rock-like. That's why people often ask how to get free from these things. It can only be freed by progressive refinement. If nature is crude, these things will be there. Because crude nature requires this. So the torment, edging, the dire force of lust that wakes kinetic in earth's dullard slime. It's interesting he has used the word slime. So one is, of course, we know slime as, there is a game called slime, like plasticine. So you make all kinds of things out of it.
Children love it.
Children love it, absolutely, and parents detest it, yet they get it for their children. Yet they get it for their children. It keeps them occupied, but it also creates a mess. But this is a perfect way to understand creation. That's how nature does. It breaks a form and rebuilds. So, and wakes kinetic. What wakes kinetic? The dire force of lust suddenly makes the stone and the dull slime become alive at that level and carves a personality out of mud. See, at a certain stage of evolution, when man is too much associated with the mud, you tell them that, today there is a satsang going on, will you come? So unless, unless it's a social thing, even satsangs are social things. People wear nice dresses, clothes, or they know ki, Guruji will bless and some reward in heaven or here I'll get. Otherwise, some excuse, I'm busy. Tell the same person, shall we go out for dinner today? You see? And there are places where people go for much worse things, which we did not even speak about. So wakes kinetic in earth's dullard slime and carves a personality out of mud. Now this carving of personality is a very painful process. It's literally like you pick up mud and you have sometimes to squeeze it, knead it. Sometimes you have to slap it. That's how Kabir, says that what is the Guru's role in the disciples' shaping. So he says that Guru is like the potter and the disciple is like the clay. Out of the clay he has to make a pot. So what does he do? He supports you from inside by the inner one hand, but hits you from the outside by the other hand.
But it's better than chiseling out of stone.
Yeah. And absolutely better, much better. गुरु कुम्हार शिष्य कुंभ है, अंतर अंतर हाथ सहार दे, बाहर मारे चोट. So this is how he removes the code, the defects of a nature. But inside he is the one who supports. So this is how personality is shaped through a million obstacles. And people want to run away and escape. If you try to do that, you won't ever become really an individual, even an individual in the earth's ignorant sense. You have to take the challenge of life, face it, go through it. And carves a personality out of mud. Then he describes how this personality is formed and the sorrow by which nature's hunger is fed. How beautiful. What is nature's hunger? For the infinite, for the absolute of sweetness, love, beauty, joy, truth. I have felt the hungry heart of earth aspiring beyond heaven to Krishna's feet. Lest it be too satisfied too soon, the divine, who is a giver of all boons, comes to snatch them away. Then we have the hunger. Is fed. How sorrow? We go through sorrow. And what Krishna does is amazing. He throws another illusion. You get ready, then another one. Till we are ready, okay, now I want you. He said, now you see me in everyone. That is the ultimate. And sorrow, the sorrow by which nature's hunger is fed. The estrus which creates with fire of pain. We know what estrus is, many people may not be aware. So estrus is the pain that animals and women, experience
During birth.
before. This is the before the periods. It's a mid-term pain. That's what is called estrus. Birth is the labor pain. There also it applies that labor. So it's a pain. They experience a kind of pain in the abdomen, and this is an indication they start seeking for something. And this is how nature brings people together. It creates in the body certain changes, which seem to lead man and woman, to come together, because that is the time when there is a maximum chance of conception. And then there is, of course, the labor pain. So both aspects, at the beginning and in the end, there is this pain which creates by labor. So if there is pain, a new creation is close by. That's how we should see. The fate that punishes virtue with defeat. Ordinarily we say, if there is God, why the good are being punished? A common question. As if by being good, we have signed a contract with God that if you are good, then the consequence of being good is that your goodness will increase. It will become a power till it becomes the divine good in all things. That's the logical thing. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says in his beautiful set of essays, The Problem of Rebirth. So he says, if you are honest, it doesn't mean that you will succeed, let us say, in this or that, in every endeavor. It will increase in you the force of moral purity. Because you have exercised self-control and self-restraint. It is not a guarantee that now onwards, I am an honest taxpayer, therefore God is very happy with us and He will make sure that everything will be fine. No. Rather, if it wants us to come out of this sense of self-righteousness, there are people who are stuck in that. I know someone who told me, I am already doing karma yoga. I said, wonderful. I didn't try to tell him anything, but someone had told him. So he said, I am already doing karma yoga. I am an officer in the army and I do all my job regularly, meticulously, honestly. I said, wonderful, carry on. But there is no point in saying anything further. But there is no yoga without the divine. He was an atheist. I said, there is no yoga without the divine. You are doing good karma, which is very good. It's good in today's times even to do good karma. But good karma will increase the force of goodness in us. It is not an automatic guarantee. In fact, when the divine wants us to remove this, I am self-righteous, look at these fellows, immoral people. So, When you say that, divine will say, okay, you are calling them names, I'll show you where you stand. Your feet deep inside the same mud and mire. So that's why the virtue is punished with defeat, so that we may grow humbler and wiser and stronger and not be closed in half-hearted formulas. So all this truth is revealed. The fate that punishes virtue with defeat, the tragedy that destroys long happiness, because we thought this is the ultimate happiness. We never knew that this too will pass away. Lest man stop seeking the eternal and the permanent, there comes grace in this way. Heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayer. The tragedy that destroys long happiness. And now come these wonderful lines. The weeping of love, the quarrel of the gods. Love wants to unite. Love seeks to give itself. The last step of love is that you are giving, but you want at least, as Mother says, recognition that yes, there is genuineness. But even that, so it weeps because it cannot. There is something which separates. The weeping of love. The quarrel of the gods, even the great godheads. So he has gone beyond that domain. See, there is a realm of the overmind where the gods, each has its own domain. And in his own domain,
And its own power.
Power. If you go to Kailash, you have to follow what Shiva says, and the Nandi there is mighty. If you go to Vaikuntha, then it's a different mood, different atmosphere. Narad is chanting. If you go to Shiva's place, it's either Damaru playing, or you have suddenly if he start doing, his great dance, the mighty one. But if you go to Vaikuntha, it's all Hari, 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 Hari. If you go to Brahmalok, then it's different. Veena is playing, different atmosphere. Narad has access to all of them. Narad is child of Brahma, but devotee of Vishnu. And of course, Parvati is mother. So he's a very interesting unifying character in Indian mythology. But each has its own domain there. But sometimes they fight on earth. Their powers and forces fight for manifesting. And you see in Mahabharata, Indra's child is Arjuna. And Surya's child is Karna. And they are almost at each other's throat. Quarrel of the gods. Why? Because each idea, in ignorance, wants to express its hegemony. That is why the mother said, Shobinda said, over mind creation we do not want. It will create a new religion. See, that's what happened to religion. Even the highest religions, if they even glimpse something like the overmind, picked up one idea and made it absolute. God is love. What about wisdom? What about power? What about bliss? So when we do that, by the very fact that there is one idea with which we want to unite all other ideas, there is a war because every idea wants to express itself. And we see later on how religions, by this very fact, become false, falsified. So the quarrel of the gods. Love is a great god. Justice is also a god. So imagine kindness has its own Godhead. Now if goddess of kindness and goddess of justice meet together, there is going to be a problem. If Shani meets with, Shani is the god of justice. Justice is important. It's an aspect of the divine upon earth. And the goddess of kindness will say mercy. So they quarrel with each other. But there, not there. It is lower down. There it ceases. Seized in a truth which lives in its own light. It sees everything in the light of truth. The light which is in each of these gods and goddesses and each of these movements and actions. And therefore these truths are revealed to someone who lives in that light. And then we can say, his soul stood free, a witness and a king. So this is the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release. See how Shobinda has used the symbol of the king. It is not just Raj Guhya Yoga. Who is really a king, who has mastered these multiple aspects of multiplicity in creation, this constant flux, and is a king. I think we can read 3 lines more, 4 lines. What happens when this state comes? Absorbed, no more in the moment, ridden flux. People often ask, oh my God, where is... Somebody asked me today, usual, are you not worried about the world? So my answer was, I can share. I said, see, there are 2 kinds of people who are not worried about the world. One is the selfishly indifferent, who cares only for his own personal advantage, desires, and the ascetically indifferent, who is only bothered about his own nirvana. Fortunately, I am neither. But being worried about the world is a different thing. You are concerned about the world, you care about the world. But you look for the right solutions, the true solutions. Worried doesn't mean you become an activist and start taking a flag and saying, I am deeply worried about the world. And I said, where does the hope come from? Again, I ended with this paradox. It started with these 2 paradoxes, I ended with the paradox. As I see, at the bottom, it's very simple. If you believe there is a divine in creation, out of whom creation has emerged, then why worry? And if you believe that there is no divine in this creation, then why worry? What is there to worry about? An accident in time dissolved by another accident in time. So the concerns change. It's not like when Mother was asked, does the yogi who lives in the supermind takes interest in worldly things? He said, yes, but not the way human beings take it. The newspaper used to come to Sri Aurobindo and sometimes they would tell him the news and very interesting observations that Sri Aurobindo made. The radio, it's still there. The radio through which Pavitrada had made, it's such a joy to see that. And he would play the radio and tell him the news. And Sri Aurobindo would hear. Now somebody would believe that, Sri Aurobindo is taking input from the news to know. No. There are moments he says, no, this is not true. This is propaganda. He would hear Churchill's speech and he would know that where all he has faltered. So it's very interesting. He is apparently outwardly is taking interest. But this from a different point of view, he is saying that at the darkest levels, what's happening? Obscurest level. So newspaper used to come and some of these youngsters had a good time. Youngster or they would sit while Sri Aurobindo is, in that state which is described here. It's, of course, we can only imagine Sri Aurobindo sitting in his room. And what was his state? 4 lines. Absorbed no more in the moment-ridden flux. They say that in Alipur jail, those who were with him, some of them, that he was in such a state that even if a nuclear bomb had to burst, it would make no response. That was the state through which one has to pass. Absorbed no more in the moment-ridden flux, where mind incessantly drifts as on a raft, hurried from phenomenon to phenomenon, he abode at rest in indivisible time. And this mind on a raft, this is an image described in some of the Vedantic literature. Swami Vivekananda describes it in great graphic detail. He says, what is the nature of the mind? He says, you imagine a monkey sitting on the top of the pole of a mast of a boat which is, moving on a sea which is extremely turbulent and rough. So that monkey is the mind. It is hurrying from phenomena to phenomena. But then when you are at rest in indivisible time, then you can know the past, present, future. And many things of the future will begin to reveal itself. Simply because you are there where the determinisms are taking place. So we'll read these 4 lines, maybe stop with that.
Yes.
Absorbed no more in the moment-ridden flux, where mind incessantly drifts as on a raft, hurried from phenomenon to phenomenon, he abode at rest in indivisible time.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Allah.
you. Beautiful passage we read.